We're out of immediate danger, Lieutenant Kozlov reports as the horizon stabilizes after the emergency jump. Fold space drive is cooling down. No pursuit detected. Captain Rice nods, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. First contact with an alien intelligence, humanity's dream for generations, and it had immediately tried to destroy them. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7, contained by emergency fields. 3 crew with minor injuries. Sensor array beta completely gone. Rice crosses to the science station, where Dr. Shaw is already processing the data they captured in those precious seconds before jumping. Tell me something useful, Doctor. Shaw's dark eyes remain fixed on the holographic display as her fingers dance through the data. Their vessels aren't constructed. They're grown. The crystalline structure has organic properties, like a silicon-based life form that's evolved far beyond what we'd recognize as biological. And they attacked without provocation, Rice says quietly. Not exactly. Shaw brings up a spectral analysis. They scanned us first, completely invasive frequencies that penetrated every section of our ship. They examined us and decided we needed to be eliminated. The ship's tactical officer, Commander Jackson, joins them. Captain, I've analyzed their attack pattern. It wasn't designed to disable or capture. It was an extermination protocol. Clinical. Efficient. Rice feels a chill. They've done this before. Look at this. Shaw interrupts, pulling up a new display showing quantum signatures detected from the alien vessels. These patterns match anomalous readings from 3 star systems that went silent in the past year. The command center falls silent as the implications sink in. They're methodically clearing a path through this sector, Jackson whispers. Rice activates the ship-wide communication system. All department heads to the briefing room in 10 minutes. Navigation, plot the fastest course back to Earth. We need to warn them. In the briefing room, the ship's senior officers gather around a holographic projection of the solar system. Dr. Shaw explained her findings, her voice growing more urgent. Based on the trajectory data we captured and the pattern of systems they've already visited, I can project their course with 89% certainty. She highlights a path that cuts through space directly toward Earth. They'll reach our solar system in approximately 7 weeks. Chief Engineer Alvarez, his uniform still stained with coolant from emergency repairs, shakes his head. Even at maximum fold space capacity, it'll take us 5 weeks to reach Earth. That leaves 2 weeks to prepare a defense. Rice finishes, against a force that treats us like an infection to be sterilized. Medical Officer Dr. Chen speaks up. What about the colonies? Europa, Titan, Mars. We warn everyone, Rice says firmly. But realistically, Earth has our largest defense fleet. It's our best chance for survival. She turns to her communications officer. Prepare a data package with everything we've collected. If anything happens to us during the return journey, emergency beacons need to carry this information forward. As the officers disperse to their stations, Rice remains alone in the briefing room, watching the projected path of the alien fleet, the Axiom Collective, as their computer has designated them, cutting inexorably toward humanity's homeworld. She thinks of Earth's modest defense fleet, the 300 military vessels that had seemed so impressive during the last Unity Day parade. Against the thousands of crystalline ships they glimpsed, it would be like sending rowboats against battleships. Her comm unit chirps. Captain, says Kozlov's voice. Fold space drive is ready. Course to Earth plotted and locked in. Rice takes one last look at the holographic display. Engage when ready, Lieutenant. Let's go home while we still have one. Dr. Patel's laboratory transforms into a war room within hours of Admiral Chen's broadcast. Military officials crowd between research assistants as holographic projections of the crystalline fragments rotate above specialized analysis tables. The structural integrity is unlike anything we've seen, Patel explains to General Rivera of Earth's Ground Defense Force. Traditional weapons disperse energy across their crystalline matrices without significant damage. Rivera scowls. Then what can hurt them? Disruption rather than destruction, Patel suggests, manipulating the projection to show quantum resonance patterns. Their strength is perfect coordination. If we can introduce chaos into order. An aide interrupts with an urgent message. Rivera reads it and looks up sharply. 20,000 civilian vessels have already responded to the call. Traffic control systems are overwhelmed. Throughout the solar system, the response escalates beyond anyone's predictions. On Titan, the methane mining consortium votes unanimously to send their entire fleet minus 72 heavy industrial platforms, normally used to process Saturn's atmospheric gases. CEO Victoria Liu addresses her 10,000 employees through tears. Some of us must stay to maintain critical infrastructure, but I'll be piloting the lead vessel myself. At Jupiter's Europa Research Station, scientists load irreplaceable research samples onto emergency transports. We're bringing ice-penetrating sonar equipment, announces Dr. Mikhail Volkov over the command channel. The frequencies might disrupt crystalline structures. The luxury cruise liner Stellar Princess, carrying 3,000 passengers on a Saturn ring observation tour, holds an emergency vote. Captain Navarro is stunned when 89% of civilians choose to join the defense rather than evacuate to safer regions. We have reinforced hulls designed to withstand micrometeorite storms, explains passenger Diane Wu, a retired engineer, plus 2,000 pairs of hands ready to help however needed. On Mars, courier pilot Sanjay Mehta watches his small transport ship undergo hasty weapons retrofitting. The makeshift railgun cobbled together from mining equipment looks dangerously unstable. Will it work? He asks the harried technician. For about 3 shots before it fries your power systems, she answers honestly. Make them count. Similar scenes unfold across every human settlement as Admiral Chen's call resonates through the collective consciousness of the species. Private yacht owners, corporate security vessels, scientific explorers, and cargo haulers converge on designated rally points throughout the system. At Earth's orbital command, Admiral Chen meets with his hastily assembled war council, an unprecedented mixture of military officers, civilian captains, and colonial representatives. The tactical hologram shows an ever-growing swarm of friendly indicators approaching Earth orbit. We need organizational structure, insists Colonel Navarro of Earth's Space Marine Corps. Clear chains of command, designated battle groups. Traditional military hierarchy won't work against their hive mind, counters Captain Rice, still bearing the physical and psychological scars of the Horizon's encounter. The Axiom anticipate conventional tactics. Their formations reconfigure instantaneously to counter predictable attack patterns. Then we don't give them patterns to counter, says Misaki Tanaka, an asteroid belt racing champion whose swift ships have volunteered as scouts. Let each captain make tactical decisions independently within mission parameters. Chen studies the tactical display, watching as thousands more ships join the gathering fleet every hour. He's never commanded such a diverse, unorthodox force, because no one has. Both approaches have merit, he finally decides. We'll create a hybrid command structure. Basic mission objectives and coordination from central command. Tactical flexibility at the unit level. We'll use what the Axiom don't understand, human unpredictability. As the Council begins drafting battle plans, Dr. Patel's urgent message interrupts. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough with the crystalline samples. I need Captain Rice in my laboratory immediately. We may have found a weakness. Controlled, localized fold space ruptures is a lovely theory, Captain Rice says, staring at the simulation results on Dr. Patel's screen. But these calculations assume we can get close enough to deploy the device. The simulation plays again, a tiny human vessel approaching the Axiom formation, releasing the pulse emitter and escaping the radius of effect before detonation. The crystalline ships in the blast zone turn on each other in confusion before the simulation resets. The delivery is the problem, Patel admits, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. Standard missiles would be detected and neutralized. It needs to be smuggled in, and that means a manned mission. Rice finishes. At extreme close range. They're interrupted by a commotion outside the lab. A group of civilians in mining uniforms are arguing with security personnel. Let them through, Patel calls, recognizing the insignia of the Ganymede Deep Core Consortium. The group's leader, a weathered man with an artificial leg, introduces himself as Foreman Dmitry Volkov. We heard you need delivery specialists. My team has experience planting precision charges in unstable environments. This isn't a mining operation. Security Officer Lin protests. Isn't it? Volkov counters. We're talking about creating precise ruptures in a crystalline structure. That's exactly what we do, just on a larger scale. Rice studies the miners thoughtfully. How close can you get to a target before deploying charges? Volkov grins. Close enough to feel the heat, Captain. In Earth orbit, the first joint training exercises revealed the staggering challenges of coordinating such diverse vessels. A formation of military cruisers attempts to practice defensive maneuvers with converted cargo haulers, their vastly different acceleration capabilities causing near collisions. This is impossible, Lieutenant Commander Park tells Admiral Chen during the debriefing. The civilian ships can't maintain military formations. Then we adapt the formations, Chen responds. Have the military vessels serve as focal points for civilian clusters. We'll call it the sunflower pattern. Military ships at the center. Civilian vessels arranged by capability class in surrounding layers. On the tactical display, Chen demonstrates his concept, rearranging ship icons into organic-looking clusters rather than rigid formations. The Axiom expect mathematical precision, he explains. We'll give them organized chaos instead. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, former smuggler Kara Santos leads a flotilla of unmarked ships through high-risk maneuvers. Her crews, mostly independent prospectors and salvage operators from the belt's frontier settlements, have navigation skills honed by years of avoiding both corporate security and pirates. Again, she orders over the comm as her pilots execute another complex evasion pattern. The Axiom targeting systems look for consistent trajectories. Keep your movements unpredictable but purposeful. One pilot, a young woman barely out of her teens, executes a particularly daring spiral between two training markers. Nice work, Ayala, Santos comments. Where'd you learn to fly like that? Delivering medical supplies through the Jovian blockade during the colony uprising. Ayala responds. Corporate security uses predictive targeting algorithms too. Santos grins. Your criminal past might just save humanity. In the designated assembly area near Ceres, the growing human fleet begins organizing into Chen's sunflower formations. Military officers overcome their initial skepticism as they see how the organic pattern can adapt to the widely varying capabilities of the civilian craft. On her command shuttle, Vera Kuznetsov stares out the viewport at the assembled fleet, now nearly 100,000 ships strong, with more arriving hourly. The sight is both inspiring and terrifying, a testament to humanity's determination and the scale of the threat they face. Her comms officer interrupts her thoughts. Captain, priority message from Luna Base. Dr. Patel is requesting mining vessels with experience in precision detonations. He says it's for a special operation. Tell him he's got them. Kuznetsov replies. And ask what exactly he's planning to blow up. They're targeting command vessels because they assume our hierarchy mirrors theirs. Captain Liang transmits to his mining flotilla as another Earth destroyer dissolves under concentrated Axiom fire. Broadcast to all nearby units. Constant course changes. No vessel maintains lead position for more than 30 seconds. His retrofitted mining ships implement the strategy immediately, rotating leadership positions in unpredictable patterns. The Axiom weapons track each temporary flagship until it drops back into formation, by which time another has taken its place. It's working, his tactical officer reports. Their targeting efficiency has dropped by 22%. Other captains across the battlefield observed the effectiveness of Liang's approach and adapted to their own units. The human fleet fragments into hundreds of autonomous groups with constantly shifting internal hierarchies, a battlefield nightmare for conventional tactics, but increasingly effective against the Axiom's anticipatory targeting. On the command carrier Unity, Admiral Chen watches tactical displays with his senior staff. The chaotic response is buying us time, notes Commander Ortiz, but we're still losing ships at an unsustainable rate. Without a decisive counterstrike, this is just a slower defeat. Chen nods grimly. Status of Dr. Patel's device. Ready for deployment, Ortiz confirms. Captain Rice and her volunteer escort squadron are prepared to launch under command. Authorization granted. And may whatever gods they believe in watch over them. In the Horizon's launch bay, Captain Rice conducts final checks on the refitted exploration vessel. The massive fold-space pulse emitter occupies the entire cargo hold, leaving minimal space for life support and navigation systems. Around her, the 12 pilots of her escort squadron prepare their own vessels, the fastest ships in the human fleet, ranging from military interceptors to civilian racing craft. Racing champion Jin Hayashi calibrates the thrust vectoring on his modified Stardancer, its sleek racing hull now bristling with defensive countermeasures. Ever flown formation with military escorts? Rise asks him. No, Hayashi admits. But I've won the Saturn circuit 3 times against pilots who'd ram me into the rings for the prize money. I can handle evasive maneuvers. Rise smiles despite the tension. We'll deploy in rotating defense patterns. Your job is to intercept anything targeting the horizon until we reach optimal deployment range. And after that, full burn away from the detonation radius. Some of us might make it back. Neither believes it, but the pretense provides comfort. In Mars orbit, Dr. Patel watches the deployment preparations on a secure channel. His team continues working on miniaturized versions of the device, but the prototype on Rai's ship remains their best hope for proving the concept works against the Axiom. The theoretical models are solid, his assistant assures him, noticing his anxiety. Theory and reality often disagree, Patel responds, especially when reality involves tearing holes in spacetime. A proximity alert interrupts them. Another massive wave of vessels is arriving. Ships from the furthest human outposts finally reaching the battle space. The tactical display updates. 300,000 vessels now registered in the system. How many need to survive for humanity to continue? Patel wonders aloud. His assistant doesn't answer. They both know the question isn't truly about numbers. On the Horizon's bridge, Captain Rice receives the launch authorization. All escorts, comms check. 12 voices respond in sequence, a mix of military precision and civilian determination. Mission parameters confirmed, Rice continues. We'll approach using the Shadow 7 vector, utilizing the debris field for partial cover. Deploy on my mark in 3, 2, 1. The Horizon and its 12 escorts launch into the void, accelerating toward the heart of the Axiom formation, where the geometric perfection of the alien fleet seems most vulnerable. Behind them, the assembled human defenders press the attack with renewed vigor, creating the diversion needed for this one desperate gamble to succeed. As the Horizon penetrates deeper into Axiom territory, the escort squadron executes increasingly desperate maneuvers to protect their cargo. Racing champion Jin Hayashi's Stardancer draws fire from 3 crystalline vessels simultaneously, its enhanced engines pushing structural integrity to the breaking point. Port thrusters failing. He reports calmly as warning lights flood his cockpit. I can maintain escort position for approximately 40 more seconds. Make them count, Rise responds, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. One by one, the escorts sacrifice themselves. Lieutenant Ramirez interposes her interceptor between the Horizon and an Axiom energy beam, her ship vaporizing instantly but buying precious seconds. Major Khalid's fighter manages to destroy an Axiom scout with a point-blank missile barrage before succumbing to return fire. Approaching optimal deployment range, announces the Horizon's navigation AI as warning lights cascade across Reyes' command console. Life support failures multiply as system after system diverts power to the shields protecting the Fold space emitter. 90% of engineering systems compromised, reports the tactical officer, face illuminated by emergency lighting. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. Reyes nods grimly. Detach and activate the emitter on my mark. The remaining 3 escort vessels form a final protective triangle around the horizon. Jin Hayashi's stardancer performs an impossible spiral maneuver that costs him his port wing but draws fire from their starboard flank. Mark. The Fold Space Pulse emitter detaches, its activation sequence initiating automatically. With the last functioning maneuvering thrusters, Reyes guides the Horizon away from the deployment zone, hoping to put enough distance between them and reality's imminent rupture. The emitter activates, and space itself seems to distort. Colors bend as light warps around the anomaly. The nearest Axiom ships contort, their perfect crystalline structures suddenly subjected to conflicting quantum states. Their synchronized movements falter as the quantum frequencies binding their hive consciousness fragment. In the ensuing confusion, several Axiom vessels fire on their own kind, their targeting systems compromised by the localized disruption in the quantum field that connects them. It's working, Reyes whispers as her ship's sensors capture the effect before failing. With her final conscious effort, she compiles the data and broadcasts it on all emergency channels. The transmission ends abruptly as the bridge loses atmosphere. The captain's vital signs flatlined on the medical monitoring system. Jin Hayashi, tumbling through space in the remains of his stardancer, witnesses both the success of the emitter and the destruction of the Horizon. With his oxygen reserves dwindling, he manages one final transmission to the fleet. Confirm effectiveness. The hive? Disrupted. Worth the cost. At Earth Command, Dr. Patel watches Reyes' data transmission with a maelstrom of emotions. The sacrifice of the Horizon and her escorts proves his theory correct, but validation comes at a terrible price. Begin full-scale production of miniaturized disruptors immediately, he orders his team. Priority 1. Every available fabrication facility in the system. Admiral Chen, viewing the same data, makes his own difficult decision. Broadcast on all channels. We need volunteer pilots for one-way missions carrying these devices. Be honest about the survival odds. His communications officer hesitates. Sir, that's asking people to. I know what I'm asking. Chen interrupts softly. But they deserve the choice. The call goes out across all human frequencies. The response overwhelms even the most optimistic projections. On Luna Base, retired pilots reactivate their credentials. In orbit around Neptune, a science vessel redirects to Earth, its crew of researchers unanimously volunteering. Throughout the asteroid belt, independent miners and prospectors abandon claim disputes to join the effort. A group of elderly cargo pilots, many with terminal radiation exposure from years traversing unshielded routes, forms the last flight squadron with a simple message. We have the least to lose and the most experience to offer. Families draw lots to decide which members will go. Couples create impromptu wills. Young pilots forge identity documents to meet age requirements. As the miniaturized disruptors enter mass production, the defensive fleet swells beyond 500,000 vessels, no longer just military and converted civilian craft, but everything capable of carrying a disruptor into the heart of the enemy. Humanity faces its darkest hour with unprecedented unity, preparing for what everyone understands may be their final stand. Mira O'Keefe's voice remains steady as 3 of her Firefly squadron disintegrate under concentrated axiom fire. Pattern Delta 3, deploy disruptors in designated zones on my mark. The remaining Fireflies dart between massive axiom vessels, moving too quickly and unpredictably for the aliens' targeting systems to lock effectively. These lightweight vessels, stripped down to minimal life support, engines, and a single disruptor, exemplify humanity's new strategy: speed over armor, sacrifice over preservation. Mark. 7 disruptors activate simultaneously, creating overlapping fields of quantum disruption. The affected Axiom ships twist in impossible geometries as their crystalline structures experience conflicting spatial coordinates. In the ensuing confusion, they fire indiscriminately, several beams striking their own kind. All units exploit breach point Gamma. Captain Torres of the Heavy Assault Group Hammer announces as his formation of retrofitted cargo haulers drives into the gap. Their makeshift weapons, mining lasers and industrial cutting tools, prove surprisingly effective against the temporarily vulnerable crystalline structures. For the first time in the conflict, Axiom ships shatter under sustained human fire. The tactical network lights up with confirmation of 23 crystalline vessels destroyed in a single coordinated assault. A ragged cheer echoes across communication channels, quickly silenced as the Axiom fleet responds with an unexpected strategy shift. Their perfect geometric formation, maintained since their arrival, dissolves as they disperse into smaller autonomous units spread across a vastly wider area. They're adapting, Admiral Chen observes from the command carrier Unity. The disruptor's cascade effect is limited when targets are dispersed. His tactical officers analyze the new Axiom configuration. Sir, they've reduced their coordination efficiency to limit vulnerability. It's a trade-off that works against our current strategy. Chen nods grimly. Sound general retreat. All vessels disengage and regroup at the Mars defensive line. As the human fleet pulls back in controlled withdrawal, tactical officers compile data from the engagement. Despite heavy losses, the disruptor strategy has proven viable, the first technology showing real effectiveness against the Axiom. Yet the enemy's rapid adaptation demonstrates their own formidable intelligence. In the officers' mess aboard the Unity, squadron leaders gather around the holodeck displaying battle footage. Lieutenant Commander Vassiliev, one of the few surviving military tacticians from Earth's original defense force, highlights a curious pattern. Notice how the Axiom ships move during our attack. He points to a specific segment where crystalline vessels reconfigured to protect a central position. Their dispersal wasn't random. They prioritized certain formations, even when it cost them tactical advantage elsewhere. Dr. Paddle enters, his face showing the strain of days without proper rest. The assembled officers fall silent, recognizing the architect of the only technology giving them a fighting chance. You've noticed it too, he says to Vassiliev, studying the holographic display. The protection patterns reveal hierarchical importance within their fleet. He manipulates the display, overlaying data from dozens of engagement points. A pattern emerges, subtle but undeniable protection formations consistently oriented around specific sectors of the Axiom fleet. We've been assuming their hive mind operates as a distributed network, Paddle continues, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. But this suggests a centralized node structure, a primary consciousness directing the collective. Captain Rahman of Special Operations leans forward. Are you suggesting they have a command ship, a brain we could target? Not exactly a ship, Paddle corrects. More like a primary node, a central crystalline entity that coordinates the entire collective consciousness. The others protect it instinctively, even when doing so creates tactical disadvantages. Chen studies the pattern thoughtfully. If we could isolate and neutralize this primary node, their entire fleet would become disorganized, Paddle confirms, like severing the central nervous system. The room falls silent as the implications sink in. After countless losses and sacrifices, they've identified a potential path to victory, not through overwhelming force, but by striking at the very center of the enemy's consciousness. We'll need precise analysis of every engagement, Chen orders. Find this primary node, confirm its existence and location, and begin planning the most coordinated assault in human history. As the tactical team disperses to their tasks, the ship's systems report the updated fleet numbers, 650,000 vessels of astonishing diversity, from military destroyers to hastily armed civilian craft, united by a desperate determination to survive. Admiral Chen studies the holographic battle plan with his senior officers, the culmination of thousands of simulations and analyses of every axiom engagement. The mission requires perfect timing across hundreds of thousands of vessels, Commander Rodriguez explains, highlighting critical interception points. Each breach in their defensive screen will exist for approximately 12 seconds before their adaptive algorithms close it. Captain Hiroshi Tanaka of the Martian Defense Force points to a particularly challenging vector. This approach requires crossing their most concentrated fire zone. Survival probability is below 7%. My squadron will take it, he adds without hesitation. One by one, other commanders select their positions in the assault plan, accepting near-certain death with quiet dignity. The room falls silent when they reach the Central Strike Team assignment, the most dangerous role requiring a vessel capable of carrying the largest fold space disruptor ever constructed directly to the Axiom Prime node. I'll lead the strike team personally, Chen announces, surprising no one. As architect of humanity's defense, he wouldn't ask others to take risks he wouldn't face himself. The Unity is too valuable as a command vessel, protests his executive officer. I'll transfer command to General Rivera, Chen responds. The Dauntless will serve as my strike vessel. Later, in his private quarters, Chen records messages for his family. His wife Maria, overseeing civilian evacuation protocols on Europa. His son Lai, serving as a medic aboard one of the fleet hospital ships. His daughter Sophia, too young to understand why her father won't be coming home. I wish I could tell you I had no doubts, he says to the recording device, that I faced this with perfect courage. The truth is, I'm terrified. Not of dying, but of failing. Of letting you all down when it matters most. He pauses, collecting himself. But I want you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, humanity faced this threat together. We didn't surrender, we didn't fracture. We stood as one. And that gives me hope for the future, whatever it holds. Across the assembled fleet, similar scenes unfold as pilots and crews prepare for what many know will be their final mission. In mess halls and private quarters, messages are recorded, mementos exchanged, promises made to survivors. Yet amid the solemnity, a strange camaraderie flourishes. On the civilian transport Artemis, now converted to a light attack vessel, the crew holds an impromptu celebration, dancing to ancient Earth music. Aboard the mining platform Deep Horizon, Captain Liang leads his crew in a traditional tea ceremony, finding peace in ritual. Dr. Patel, now aboard the Dauntless with Admiral Chen, makes final adjustments to the enhanced fold space disruptor. His hands move with practiced precision, despite his exhaustion. The cascading effect should be exponentially greater than previous deployments, he explains. If the theory holds, the disruption will spread throughout their entire quantum communication network. And if the theory doesn't hold? Chen asks. Patel looks up from his work. Then we will have given everything for nothing. Chen nods, accepting the brutal honesty. How much of this is science, and how much is faith, Doctor? At this point, Patel smiles faintly. The line has blurred considerably. On the bridge of the medical frigate Mercy, Jin Hayashi, the racing champion who survived the Horizon mission, watches the assembled fleet through his recovery room viewport. His injuries will prevent him from piloting in the final assault, a fact that torments him more than the pain. They're calling it the largest space battle in human history, says the nurse, checking his vitals. Let's hope it's not the last, Hayashi responds, his gaze fixed on the stars where 700,000 ships prepare for humanity's final gambit. Throughout the fleet, countdown timers synchronize. In 6 hours, the assault will launch, a precisely choreographed dance of sacrifice and determination, humanity's answer to the cold efficiency of the Axiom Collective. The battle rages across an unprecedented expanse of space, a three-dimensional chessboard where pieces move at relativistic speeds. From his position on the Dauntless, Admiral Chen watches tactical displays update in real time as thousands of vessels execute their precisely calculated maneuvers. Breach point Alpha secured but collapsing fast, reports his tactical officer. Rodriguez's squadron took 70% losses holding it open. Commence micro-jump sequence. Chen orders, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. Honor their sacrifice by succeeding. The Dauntless vanishes from its position, reappearing milliseconds later within the temporarily created gap in the Axiom defenses. 2 escort vessels immediately move to intercept incoming fire, their hulls disintegrating under the concentrated energy beams meant for Chen's ship. Throughout the battlesphere, similar sacrifices unfold with mechanical precision. The mining vessel Deep Horizon deliberately rams an Axiom crystal ship that threatens to close Breach Point Gamma, its captain and crew vaporized instantly, but creating the critical seconds needed for Chen's strike team to proceed. Second micro-jump complete, announces the navigation officer. Breach Point Beta ahead, heavily contested. On the view screen, Chen watches Captain Tanaka's squadron engaged in a desperate holding action, their ships forming an ever-shrinking perimeter around the planned jump point. The Martian Defense Force vessels fight with suicidal determination, absorbing punishment meant for the strike team. Tell Tanaka we're coming through, Chen orders. No response from his vessel, sir. His entire command staff is gone. Chen nods grimly. Proceed with the jump. Their sacrifice stands regardless. 3 more micro-jumps bring the Dauntless deeper into Axiom territory than any human vessel has penetrated. With each jump, more escort vessels stay behind to hold positions open, buying seconds with their lives. The ship's sensors begin detecting unusual energy patterns, quantum resonances unlike anything previously encountered. We're close, Dr. Petal says, studying the readings. The prime node is generating distinct harmonic patterns. The final jump brings them into visual range of their target, a massive crystalline structure twice the size of other Axiom vessels, its faceted surface pulsing with internal light patterns that seem almost organic. Unlike the geometric precision of regular Axiom ships, this entity's form appears in constant flux, reshaping itself in response to some unseen stimuli. It's beautiful, whispers Chen's communications officer. And deadly, Chen responds. Disruptor status. Armed and ready, reports his weapons officer. Detonation sequence initiated. 10 seconds to activation. Chen takes a moment to look at each member of his bridge crew, meeting their eyes one final time. Some are military professionals who've served under him for years. Others are civilian specialists, scientists, and engineers who volunteered for this final mission. All return his gaze with quiet dignity. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you, he tells them simply. Around them, the Dauntless begins to shudder as Axiom weapons lock on. The prime node, sensing the threat, directs overwhelming firepower toward the human vessel. Secondary systems fail in cascading sequence as shields collapse under the assault. 5 seconds to activation. Counts down the weapons officer as emergency lighting bathes the bridge in red. Chen closes his eyes briefly, thinking of Earth, blue oceans, and white clouds, city lights twinkling in the darkness, his children's laughter, worth everything they've sacrificed. 3, 2, 1. The Fold Space Disruptor activates at point-blank range to the prime node. The resulting quantum cascade tears through the crystalline structure with unprecedented force, far beyond previous deployments. The effect ripples outward like a stone dropped in still water, disrupting the quantum frequencies that bind the Axiom consciousness across their entire fleet. The prime node's destruction sends a psychic shockwave through every Axiom vessel. Confusion replaces perfect coordination as individual crystalline entities suddenly find themselves cut off from the central intelligence that has directed them since formation. Some freeze in place, others fire randomly into space or at nearby vessels. Throughout the battle zone, human ships press the advantage with desperate ferocity. Mining lasers, retrofitted weapons, even civilian vessels acting as rams, all converge on the disoriented Axiom fleet. The battle space becomes a literal inferno of exploding ships, crystalline fragments refracting weapon fire into prismatic death rays that cut through both sides indiscriminately. Vessels on both sides disintegrate by the thousands as humanity throws everything into this final push.